Okay, so it's time for the review. And we will be using Hold'em Resources Calculator. And we are going for marked hands only. We are having 5 marked hands. And let's go through the latest first. So this should be pretty well in memory. There is this Len 9 Ska that's all in from the blinds, and I'm having a larger stack than he is. And when there is one player before me, I think that I can go with pocket fours, because if I win, I'm getting something like 1.5k chip stack, and only if I lose, but this Lenska doesn't win, so I'm having pretty low downside, that I'm going to get money anyway if it's not that Lenska wins and I'm not getting second and the Yuri is getting second and I'm getting third. So, but when it's came to Winterest also shoves, I think in that situation my pocket fours are going to be an underpair pretty much all the time. So, and King Jack off is going to be an interesting shove there. And let's go through this hand on Hold'em Resources Calculator. This can be a basic hand, paste from clipboard, setting the price structure to 50/50s. This might look a bit weird when this is like 60/10/10/10/10/10. But when you are thinking about it, if a tournament is winner takes all, for example, if it would be a satellite structure with only one winner, then it would be the winner takes it all so that everything is on the top spot. And also if it would be a satellite structure for 5 peoples, there would be 5 equal sized prize pools. And in this situation, when it's half double or nothing and half winner takes it all, from the double or nothing side of it, the half of the prize pool will be divided for the 5 finishers, and then it will be mathematically like the other half of the prize pool, when it's split down according to winner takes it all, then it's going to all go to the top prize, and it's going to be correct even if it looks a bit weird. And there is an explanation on this 50/50 structure on Pokerimania's YouTube channel. Yeah, Neo, we can only look at the situation when one player is all in before us, I think. Because the third player is always all in on the blinds, so I don't think that Hold'em Resources Calculator even gives us an opportunity for an overcall. So when Yer is shoving, then he only gets an option for us, that there is not an option for overcalls. And if Yer shoves, our range that we can call is pretty wide, but only pocket fours are profitable, and this is actually a really interesting situation all in all. That there are so many minus EV hands that Hold'em Resources is having in the range, and I wonder why. Let's edit this range and select by edge, and let's select only profitable hands. And let's play it again. What range changes and how much? Like, why do I have in this situation interesting. Really interesting. Like, if I'm selecting only plus EV hands, then Yer can shove almost 10% wider, even though it's only my range that changes. This is probably one of the weirdest hands I have seen. And then we can also go a bit wider, because then there will be, when Yer is shoving wider, then we can also be wider. This is a really interesting hand. We can see that, I think pocket fours, we can look at Yer's range versus hand equities and against Aarnimetsa, and look at the pocket fours or pocket threes and pocket fives. What kind of ranges would they need from Yer to be shoving to be profitable? And we can see that, like pocket fives, Yer needs to be shoving about 13% of hands, so we will always call with pocket fives against one player. With pocket fours, it's about 18.5%, 18%. I think this is getting more debatable. I think that I would call against a regular player with pocket fours, and pocket threes I would pretty much never call because it would require 30% on him. And Neo asked that why there are so many minus EV hands. I think this is so that the width of our range constricts the ranges of other players, so... And it's also, I think, ICM is slightly breaking down in that situation. But I think this is one of the strangest hands that I have looked through with Hold'em Resources calculator. And it might also be that, like, right now we are not calculating the optimal result in a complete game. We are calculating an optimal result for a toy game where when Yer shoves and I'm calling, it removes all the opportunities for anyone behind me to act. So this is a toy game and we would need to know it that before just going through Hold'em Resources with the default settings and going with the 50% range. And usually in like Hold'em Resources calculate these ranges that all of the opponents know the other opponent's range perfectly. And in real life, you don't know your opponent's range perfectly. And you can't steer, like, Hold'em Resources can steer opponents' ranges to other directions because the opponents are knowing exactly how other opponents are adjusting to their moves. But in real game, I don't think that it makes that much of a difference if we are calling the 57% on that spot or if we are calling just the profitable 19%. I don't think that the opponent will change his range at all. But so, this is something that it's pretty interesting, I think. And that was one of the weirdest hands that I have analyzed with Hold'em Resources. Let's see the other hand then. This hand was all about when I said in game that Lisabella M should be shoving kings or better here. And the reason is that there is one really short stack that will be probably out of the money in two hands. And this Mike Boy you should call with any two cards. And also there will be Forelle will be blinded all in before Lisabella M. So Lisabella M will have two like match balls to win the game. And even if he gets called, like the pot is now 2.3k, so he can have a stack that's worth something like 5k chips. Because her survival isn't still going to be completely sure. So I think that this will be a mistake with quite a few hands because she's now risking here something like 3.5k stack to get like 1.5k more so. And that's like something that's from like just calculation in head on how this situation will turn up. And let's go through it with Hold'em resources as well. This should be pretty easy hand to go through. And if you said because we get overcalls that there will be so many black hands, then the Hold'em resources calculates a toy game that does not have any overcalls, because the Hold'em resources engine cannot handle situations with more than three people all in at once. This is weird. If Lisabella M shoves here, actually we will need to have some really interesting simulation depths here, because if we are looking at simulation depth 1, there will be no eliminations. But then let's have a hand that will have a simulation depth of 3. Actually, probably the correct simulation depth would be something like 6, because with 6 simulation depth, then there would be the parallel would be all in by blinding all in. But we can't go through 6 because every time we add a future game simulation step, it always takes a lot more computer power to calculate. And you can see it like with one hand in the future, it was instant. With 3 hands in the future, well, I hope you have time. I would do something else, but this is also, I know that the video encoder I'm using is dropping frames because Hold'em resource is taking so much of my computer's resources, and that's a bit of a problematic situation. I hope you can still hear me. Yeah, that's good if you can still hear me. I think I introduced some lag in here, and before I could change the priority of Hold'em resources, the calculation already ended. Really, really interesting that even with 3 hands of future game simulation, that should have the cutoff. Or is 3 hands enough? I'm actually a bit unsure. 3 hands should be close to enough. I think we need to try with 4. But the 4 will take, if that takes like 1 minute, I think 4 hands will take something like 20 minutes. So if I say that I'll post the result on the forums, I'll post the result on the 4 hands in the future in the forums. I think that in this situation, it will be a slightly better situation for the UTG, or a slightly worse situation for the UTG than what would be in real life when Kado or this hand small blind will be eliminated. So this is one of those hands that it's going to be a pain in the butt to analyze. Especially when the guy that's going to be all in is not all in on the next hand, but a few hands from now. So that was something that we couldn't analyze on live stream. I think the range will be tighter when there will be enough possible eliminations that the Nash equilibrium will look through. It also can be that the future game simulation can't even go there, because the future game simulation will look with regular Nash the next hand, and with regular Nash the small blind will get all in really often, even though he shouldn't get all in, because then there would be the next hand's big blind will be blinded out. So I'm unsure that can even future game simulation help us here. And Neo said that depth 5 will cause black holes to appear. Yeah, if you hear that Tallinn is missing from the face of the Earth, it must be that I did the calculation with depth of 5. Let's see the next hand that we are having here. And Ahille, I'm still thinking that the range that the opponent should play there, the Lisabella should be really, really tight, and it might be that pocket jacks are there, but I'm pretty sure that ace king shouldn't be there. If we can go to the real situation, but it's a bit hard. Because it's going to be that we don't have a tool to look through the situation correctly, I think. So I'm a bit unsure that if jacks is a good shove for Lisabella still, even though we have looked with Hold'em Resources calculator on that hand. And now there's the pocket deuces. The shove is not in question, but this is the Forelle's hand. He called here with ace-jack off, and I think it was a good call. But let's see, was it? And now I'm remembering to remove the black hole generator and go to only two hands of simulation depth in the future. That should take only a small moment. Like if I'm shoving 25%, and this is like 25% what it usually looks like. Any pocket pair, any ace, any suited Broadway higher than 9, and usually there is like any unsuited 10 or higher. So that's pretty much the 25% range. And when we are looking about this kind of a range, then Forelle could call us with ace-jack off pretty easily and make a lot of money doing it. He could even call us with king-jack off here, even when there are such a short stacks on the table. And this is also this is the same problem with future game simulation, that it can't take the big blind or the less than one big blind stack correctly into account. So I think in general ace-jack off will be a good call in here, especially as he's not risking elimination. So then he can go a lot wider, and there will be a lot of antes and big blinds in play. So this is a situation that it doesn't make that much sense for regular sit and go player, but the 50-50s, the mathematics are just different enough that when we are having large enough stacks colliding, then for a reason like right now we are having chips worth 2 eliminations in the middle. And this guy is not risking his whole stack here, so it right now in this situation, like survival and the value of the chips are pretty much equal for both opponents here. So, and when the value of chips, it's always going to be linear, there is never going to be any ICM. So then it will be closer to not an ICM situation when the stack sizes are this big. And this is something that's probably the hardest part of 50-50s for a sit and go reg. And you can also see that the Mr. Fix can also be surprisingly wide in here. Even if he isn't ending the action, he can still go with pretty wide of a range. And then Forelle, even when me and the Mr. Fix are already all in, he could call with something like ace-10 suited or ace-jack off, which is going to be quite insane. So the bubble factors are not getting as high in 50-50s when we are talking about big stacks as you would expect on the bubble. Does this make sense? Let's go for a next hand, and this is a hand that it's actually interesting, and this is also a future game spot. Like in this situation, we are not having a lot of hands on Domino Pro. I remember that he was pretty passive before. And like we are now 6-handed, and I think 6 and 7-handed there's only 2 hands on Domino Pro. And in here I think it's plus CV to call with King 10 off. I think the Domino Pro is shoving less than he should be. But I think that when we are looking at this situation, if we are calling and losing, he will have the larger stack, and our stack is not as much as a weapon against this Vobobobo and Yannis that are behind us. But if we fold, we should have, like the next 4 or 5 hands, we should have really good spots to increase our equity in the games. So this is like a future game simulator or future game spot that I'm giving up a plus EV spot right now, and if I call and if I win, the game will end. So I don't have a possibility to abuse these players after me. If I call this Domino Pro and win, and if I call this Domino Pro and lose, I probably don't have a position to abuse these players, so this is going to be something that will be interesting. So Domino Pro could shove 34.8%, and if we are looking at this kind of a range, we can see that there are plenty of suited kings that we would dominate, but it would be on the edge. And there would be some suited 10s that we would dominate. Like King 10 off would be the weakest hand that we could call if Domino Pro would be shoving as much as he could in this spot. And I think like I could easily give up 0.2% of the prize pool here and not call something like king 9 suited, queen 10 suited, king 10 off. I think even plus 0.5% would be probably what I could give up. And if we are looking at different options, that if our opponent is shoving 50% of the hand, it might be that he's not going through the situation as good as he should. Then the king 10 off would be, I think if opponent is shoving 50% of his hands here, then king 10 off will become a call. Like, we have seen that if the opponent shoved like the next 3 hands and then the 4th hand he min-raised and had pocket 10s. But if we would know that opponent is shoving something like 50% or more, we are calling with king 10 off always. But if he's shoving something like, I'd say 35%, it's about the 0.5% price pool that I can take at that spot. So it's about 40% or less. Then it's going to be that I'd say that we shouldn't be calling, and then there would be the middle ground of the 40 to 50% range. That then I'm a bit unsure that should we call or should we fold, because there would be decent future games equity even though this is a plus CV spot. And we could also look at the plot range versus hand equities on king 10 off and see how it moves. So it's actually, if we are looking at it, that opponent still needs to shove about 32% for king 10 off to be profitable. I think we can say that this probably isn't a snap call. And if we think that we are going to get some future game spots, then I think that we can fold that up to 40% of his range. And at up to 50% of his range, then it will be easy calls. It will just be too profitable. Too profitable for us to fold. And there will be opponents that are shoving 70% here. And then it will be so profitable that we can't be folding. And I think that if Achille knows that Domino Pro is a reg that shoves really widely, and he would expect that the opponent shoves 70%, then it will look stupid to not call this hand. I hope that Achille is still listening, and I don't know, do we agree or not, but that's my opinion on that. And I know that it's going to be a plus EV. It's likely going to be a plus EV call. Then there is the pocket nines. And now there is the Volkas 1, 2, 3, and then we'll need to ask what kind of range he will have. Like, I think that he's pretty much never folding with the 3x open. So we can look even at this hand as a basic hand. That's not the correct hand. That's not the correct hand. Now I'll need to be a bit confused. This is a wrong hand. Of course. Pocket nines. And now that I know that the simulation depth will be a lot I'm removing some worker threads per calculation to make sure that our stream is compromised when HRC is calculating. And the more players there are, the more the calculations will take time. And actually, 2 hands simulation depth is too much. Yeah, I already noticed that the replayer hand is likely wrong, so... If we are thinking that our UTG is opening every hand that he can with the 3x open and then calling, then it will be like 14.5%. And the pocket nines would be a decent call for us if we expect that opponent is never folding. And we can do a quick sensibility check on looking at our hand range on pocket nines, pocket tens, pocket jacks, even pocket eights. Like what kind of range our opponent needs to be having in those spots. And like if we are looking at pocket jacks, our opponent would need to be having a range of less than 6%. Actually, that's pretty close. Probably, I say that shoving pocket nines is pretty horrible in that spot. Because our opponent would need to have a over 10% range, like 11% range to 3x there. And I think that it's going to be way closer to this 6% that's at maximum. So we can actually even look pocket queens and pocket kings. Pocket queens is for sure. Pocket jacks is debatable. And I think out of these hand, like ace king off is going to be a call because it's going to be not horrible at less than 4%. It dominates some of the 4% range hands. And then it will be good from 6% onwards. Like the pocket jacks is going to be much wider in decline. And pocket queens requires only 4%. So ace king, pocket jacks plus, and pocket jacks are debatable. Pocket queens could be the call only. And I think that's a bit surprising. And I'd say that I made a pretty sizable mistake here by shoving this. But luckily I luckboxed. And Marcus Y asks, anybody outside of Finland playing on 888 poker right now? Is it working? That's actually a good question, and I hope that if someone is playing on 888 poker, please answer to Marcus Y. And played last Sunday, then it worked. Well, last Sunday is a week ago, so it's pretty far away from right now. And I'd say right now, we should be ending this coaching session. And I hope you got some new ideas and perhaps thinking about trying these 50-50s. I think that these are a great structure and you can have a lot of fun if you are having a big stack. And I think that in this coaching you noticed on how to have fun in these games. And I think that even at $15 level without game selection, these games should be beatable, but they are getting quite tough at that level. Unfortunately, we did skip past the $7 level, I would think that it would be a lot easier. The $1.5 level was really soft, and $3.5 level was also, I think it's really beatable, but the $7 level is probably some of the middle ground. And I'd say then it's time to say goodbyes for the night. So if you are going to sleep, have a good night. And if you are still playing poker, may this be the winningest night of them all. Bye!